everyone, I thought I'd try something a bit different today. If you haven't watched any of my videos before, I'm Charlotta. I'm a pattern cutter and fashion designer and teacher. I love anything vintage inspired, and I also love helping you learn to draft your own wardrobe. Today I'm gonna try something new. I'm gonna look at some vintage pattern cutting books and fashion books, and I know a lot of you also love anything vintage related, whether it's pattern cutting books, materials, tools. So I thought it might be nice to start something new and go through my library. So I love collecting old pattern magazines, old pattern cutting books, new ones as well, but anything interesting, whether it's a technique, a style, a period of history. So I thought it might be quite nice to share these books and go through them and tell you what I like about them. And I'm going to start today. I'm going to pick one in a second. I'm not quite sure which one yet. And I'm just going to flick through and show you some really interesting details and talk a bit about how you can make them, or if there's a technique, how it works and how you can adapt it. So just a quick note of warning, most of my books either come from second-hand shops, eBay, charity shops, you name it, flea markets. So I can't guarantee you can find them. So have a look online. I will put the full title and the author in the description below, but you might not be able to get it. So I apologize. So this is not a review as in something you can buy. It's more like a little vintage pattern cutting book appreciation club. So let's choose a book. You can see I have a wide interest in books, from the history of smocks, which is much more fascinating than it sounds, little pattern cutting books, which I absolutely adore, for lots of vintage ideas. I do like contemporary, interesting approaches to pattern cutting. This is actually, I looked at it in the shop and I haven't opened it yet because it's quite precious. And I love old pattern cutting, commercial pattern catalogs. So I think to start off this series, it might be nice to look at something really fun and colourful with lots of interesting pattern cutting details. So let's have a look at this 1930s, 40s commercial pattern catalogue. This vintage sewing pattern book has so many interesting pattern cutting methods in. So rather than overwhelm you with 100 images, I've chosen my top 3 pages. One is just for dart manipulation and gathers. One is for really interesting necklines, and then I thought it might also be nice to look at some trousers and some sort of summer beach wear, for easy to make vintage details. So let's have a look at these pages. What I love about this is that if you see 1940s photographs or garments from a time, they're old, so everything looks old, but these colors are really bright and sort of quite unusual. It's a turquoise. So but it has, it's sort of like a catalogue of patterns you can buy. So you can see it's got sort of nice illustrations, and then it shows you all the back views, and it has a little description below as well. So these are sort of afternoon or daytime dresses, but what I really liked about it is details like this. So disclaimer, I'm not sure how flattering it is with the drape, but it's a really nice sort of take. Is you start off like a yoke top, this gathers, but they've sort of created a separate panel there, and you can see it's gathered, and then the back of it is completely gathered. So it has a really gathered back, and then the front sort of has a fitted dress, and then it has like a sort of bolero jacket which is created out of the gathered yoke. So I thought it was a really nice detail. I quite like this for really quick details. So if you're making a really quick summer dress, they have sort of stitched a gathered strip of fabric, like a belt on top of it, and it must just be stitched to your button stand underneath as well. But I thought that might be nice. And look, they've sort of repeated it in the sleeve, so it's a really nice detail. And I actually quite like these for colors. Of course, the biggest problem is when you're buying stuff that fabric is probably impossible to find. But it's sort of quite interesting for maybe color combinations I wouldn't have picked before. I also quite like this dress, so that'd be perfect for dart manipulation and replacing your darts with seams. So I've got the typical 1940s grown on neckline, but then they've also got these really nice gathers coming from the sort of panel. So you're placing all your fitting with that sort of panel and creating gathers at the same time. And what I quite like about this, and I'm not sure it's just the illustration, it looks like the sleeve line has moved in a bit, but I think that's just me imagining things. And you can see from the wrinkles that it's quite a fitted dress, but it won't be super fitted. So it's not completely skin tight, sort of skimming fit. And lastly, what I liked on here was this dress, because I think that's really contemporary. That could be sort of slightly Claire McCardle-esque as well. But what I love about it is that it's really understated. It has that 1940s grown-on collar, which I've talked about it before. And then it has this really interesting sort of, you actually use a dolman sleeve for that. But it has a really interesting sort of epaulette yoke at the top, which sort of extends past your shoulder line, and then has like a pleat detail where it meets the sleeve. So it will end up with a really interesting pleat shape, and I love this armhole, but it's basically a dolman sleeve construction, and armhole is mostly aesthetic rather than functional. It isn't, you can put a little bit of fitting in, like a raglan sleeve. But then I think it's really nice with just a center front seam, and then I'm not sure it's cut and bias, but it sort of looks like it has a really nice volume. And then I think the back interestingly looks has lots of little buttons down the back. So I'm not sure I would do it. I'll probably just do a side seam zip, but that's a great thing about doing your sewn. So now we've looked at some sort of nice dart manipulation. Let's have a look at some necklines. This page is called Sporty Dresses, and we would probably call it maybe a shirt dress or easy to wear dress. But what I love about this is just the variety of yokes on this one. It's quite interesting just to see how you can use stripes. So look here, if you've got a vertical stripe, we got the same stripe horizontally on the yoke, and it's used with the black to show it off, and then the skirt is cut on bias, so using the same fabric, there's really different outcomes. The same on this dress, again the yoke is used the other way around, and that's sort of quite a 1970s dress apart from the shoulders. And that's a completely wide dress which is cinched in, and you can see we've done pleats and sort of yoke, so it's really nice to look at interesting pocket details. So it's basically probably the same dress each time, exactly the same bodice, and we just played around with different details. But the dress I really wanted to look at is this one, because again it has that it's quite timeless with that really nice crossover neckline. And if you think about last year, we did this really nice on summer yoke top. Do you remember this gusset sleeve strips? And they had a similar neckline. So it's just instead of having your normal one piece collar or rounded or whatever, or revers, it makes it look more sporty. This would be a beautiful jersey dress, I thought. And it's got a slightly 1940 sleeve, but what I basically have done is at the top it looks like, instead of your usual pleats, so it's got enough space for shoulder pad, but even without a shoulder pad it'd be a really nice style. I think it's either darted or it has little pleats. It works really well. And then the rest of the dress is just really simple. So it's just that one detail. I mean, then of course they got the contrast colour for the accessories. But I thought this is a really nice and unusual and vintage inspired, but could be really contemporary dress. So we've looked at a really nice selection of colours. Let's look at some trousers. So this is pyjamas, but then it sort of moves over into beach wear. And if you on my Instagram or my Patreon, you might have noticed we're really loving trousers and sort of vintage jumpsuits. So I thought it was a really nice page to look at and finish off. I quite like, so I've got lots of sort of shorts, high-waisted, this volume which has been stitched down. So these are not pleats, they're sort of more A-line with stitched on volume. But then they have these little romper suits, which is a very Claire McCardell jumpsuit. I love, look again with a yoke, and then like a sort of flared shorts, which is really interesting. And then this is a really nice jumpsuit, and it has these really nice pockets. So it's where you replace your, you add, like you make your wide leg trousers, and then you just have a seam down the middle, and then you put your pocket in the sides. So it saves fabric because you have smaller strips, but it's also like really nice. I really like this pocket construction because it's so slim, you know, it sort of creates these long vertical lines which are really flattering, and then it has these horizontal pockets line which aren't in the drawing for some reason, but I thought it was a really nice construction. But they sort of really again, it's probably quite a similar construction for most of these trousers, but it's how you sort of style it where you can really make the difference and make it interesting as well. So whether you add seams, flared, whether you gather it in. I always quite like this, I'm not sure I would wear it, but I like this sort of overdress on top of shorts. And what is quite interesting, they have a high-waistedness, but quite often they either have the shorts with a sort of crop top, which is very now again, or they actually sort of wear it with a belted blouse on top, which works well, or like a really nice sort of crossover. So this again is actually a jumpsuit. So, and then it's built like a sailor suit. So you open up the front here, and then the other side of the wrap is sort of buttoned in there, a bit like we did for the Claire McCardell dress. So it's quite a nice way of getting in and out into these. Like this was probably, actually not quite sure how to get into this one, which is of course what you always have to work out when you're working from vintage images without too much instructions. But yes, so this is a little foray into vintage inspiration. I hope you found something to inspire your pattern cutting too. So I hope you enjoyed my little flick through a vintage pattern magazine. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see more of its reviews, and also if there's anything specific you'd like to see too. If you're my Patreon, don't forget I've scanned in more of these pages so you can find even more vintage inspiration. If you haven't subscribed, please do, because I'll be back soon with a vintage inspired drafting tutorial. But for now, enjoy your drafting. Bye!